bills like this through a referendum. It is a significant enough matter. And the president goes on to number 3, for example, enter into a situation where he's given a gift nearly 200 million worth of in an aeroplane to fly and fuel to fly to America. Yet he knows that under Chapter 6 of the Constitution, he needs to actually declare anything that is above 20,000 according to the law and the Constitution. So the list of examples, the president establishes a parliament which does not meet the not more than 2/3 gender rule. He not only violated that the Constitution in the first round, he has done it again just now, this exercise that is going on. And the parliament will never raise a finger to say that you've actually violated the Constitution and you need to go back and constitute a cabinet that is constitutionally compliant. We have 31 instances where the Constitution has been violated. So those cases are in the application, which is now available, I think, globally. And so we said that as Kenyans who were involved in the birthing of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, a lot of the petitioners are people who have gone to committee, have gone to many, many police cells. We've buried many colleagues who have died in the struggle for a new constitution. And we said that we cannot stand and watch as a tyrant takes power, abuses it, dissolves our constitution, almost suspends it, which is currently the situation that the police, we have become a police state where the president has basically suspended the constitution, and he can defy it with impunity because he knows that impeachment proceedings will never be brought against him in parliament. So I want to pause there for now and say that in the face of the Gen Z and the millennials revolution, you've seen that Article 10 has been violated in the open. 93% of Kenyans say no to the finance bill. Then Parliament goes on and passes it anyway, in flagrant violation of the Constitution about public participation. So that the crisis now is that the president and Parliament do not have the legitimacy to govern. What is left to us then is to look for a constitutional route of removing the president and his deputy from office so that Kenyans can be able to elect the head of the executive who actually has the legitimacy and who abides by the Constitution and the oaths of office that they swore to uphold at Kasarani. Thank you so much, Eric, for that.
Thank you, Cyprian. Naomi Barasa is one of the 14 petitioners. Naomi, you have the mic now. Let's hear from you. Yes, go ahead, Naomi. Unmute your mic.
Thank you so much, Eric Latif, and thank you to all the speakers that have spoken before me. And thank you so much, Cyprian, for just laying that background. And I would just want to focus so much on our role as Wanjikos of these countries and the reason why we have gone to court to seek the direction of the court in terms of exercising our mandate as Wanjikos, because besides enjoying the rights as guaranteed in the Constitution, we also have the obligation to protect the Constitution. So to begin with, I just want to state that what we are doing is clearly protection of the Constitution, defense of the Constitution, which is very critical for every Wanjiko of this country, because this is a document that was established with our sweat, blood, and lives. So we cannot even dare play with it. We cannot watch people mutilate it. Otherwise, it will be too much sacrifice in vain. I want to begin with me as a mother. I am a mother of Gen Zs. And when it gets to a point, our children can no longer can no longer continue living the way they are living because, as it were, they cannot breathe. So the young adults, young Kenyans, who are by all means constitutionally have the right to demand for constitutional rights in this Kenya, go to the streets. And just using Nairobi, for example, at one point there were around 2 million people, and they speak, and their president cannot listen. For me, I think keeping quiet will be contributing to the same mutilation of the constitution. So for me, a president who ignores the voice of Wanjikos, for me, I think then ceases to be legitimate in terms of protection of this constitution. And I just want to add on to the few things that to add on the few cases that Comrade Cyprian has cited to, in terms of ignoring the voices of Wanjiko. Let's begin with the housing levy. Look at how many people spoke against the housing levy, and this very president looked for all manner of ways of circumventing his way, and he did everything he did. Even when the court said this is unconstitutional, he still went ahead. He had his way. Look at the finance bill. Comrade has elaborated on that. Look at the Haiti case, and where we sent 1,000 police officers to Haiti. We were opposed to this as Wanjikos of this country, and even we got the reinforcement of the court. But what happened? We still had our police officers going to Haiti, even when the court categorically pronounced that this was unconstitutional. And if it was anything we wanted to participate on in terms of offering support or mission for peacekeeping, it wouldn't be the police. It would basically be the military. And the case for Haiti did not qualify for that. It was ignored. We have also seen lots of Kenyans who have not supported Israel in the attack for Gaza. But what has William Ruto done? He's gone public and even pledged support, the Kenyan people's support for Israel on our behalf against our wishes. That's number one, ignoring the Wanjikos, the voice of Wanjikos of this country. And that, for me, pokes a lot of holes on the sovereignty of these Wanjikos. And I don't know if one William Ruto understands that. The second thing is just how he has managed to trump on the constitutional rights of the Wanjikos. Extrajudicial killings, children cannot go to school, sick people cannot access education, we cannot access information where need be. I mean, a lot of this. We've also seen a lot of, we've witnessed a lot of abduction. We've seen police arresting arbitrary. All this is violation of rights. And then we've also seen a lot of corruption and the opulence that comrades have talked about. And instead of the president overseeing accountability, what he has done, he's blessed case by case to be dropped for people who we clearly see that have cases of corruption and demand that require accountability. And what has he done after their cases have been dropped? Appoint them in public office. So we think that with all this, he has no capacity to protect the very constitution he vowed to defend. And so for that, as a Wanjiko, I feel like he's lost my mandate.
Thank you. Thank you, Naomi.
Eric,
Yes.
I would wish to inform you that we have Kibe. He's standing by.
Great.
So Kibe,
Kibe will speak shortly.
this is your cue.
Let's hear first from Janet Ouko, also one of the petitioners. Let's hear your voice on this.
Thank you very much, Eric, and my fellow countrymen for this opportunity to just get to share one of the very exciting opportunities that I get to contribute, to my country. I really feel very excited about the idea that we can have another alternative, that we can be able to help ourselves as Kenyans, and that we do not have to succumb to the fact that even if our president is offending the Constitution, then we are doomed for 5 years. I think for me, this is going to be very good news for the very many people who are feeling tonight that really is like the political elite of this country are coming together to perpetuate or to try and really suffocate the voices, even of children. You know, we've been in this country and we've said a lot, but seeing children really even calling us out and calling things out, and still finding a political class that cannot listen and cannot do the will of people just because they know they have secured themselves. I really want to associate myself with the comments of my colleagues, Cyprian, and of course Naomi, that have spoken before me, because we feel that we have got a lot of evidence, and these issues are out there. Kenyans have been speaking about them, that we have a president and a deputy president that do not spare any opportunity for them to offend the Constitution. And my question is, what happens to that? Because you cannot govern this country using any other thing apart from the Constitution. We do not want anybody that will govern us from their head or from some motivational notes or some verses of the Bible. We actually must entrench constitutionalism, and we make sure that the president rules us as per the Constitution. Now, in the event that he does not do that, what recourse do Kenyans have? And I'm really thanking God, because we've spoken with our lawyers and they have explained to us that actually we have an opportunity as citizens of this country, because as our lawyers have explained, that there are two ways that we can do this: directly or indirectly. Indirectly has failed, because indirectly means through our elected representatives. They are not likely to do that anytime soon. As speakers have said before that, we have tried to raise our voices. We've been hoarse, telling Parliament, no, do not pass that bill because it is killing Kenyans. They go ahead and do it. Do not pass the housing levy. It is offensive to so many Kenyans. They still go ahead and do it. Seeing tonight that we as the people, that Kenyans can have hope, that they have another alternative route, I really want to rally Kenyans around it and appreciate the immense role that we have of educating Kenyans and letting them know that they have another opportunity. It's really sad, even like what is happening tonight, you know, seeing political elites coming together because they have known that maybe we do not know this other particular route. I have seen comments, even associated with the Speaker of the National Assembly, saying that the Gen Z should be told that the president has got a 5-year mandate. And I ask, even when he kills us, he must stay on for 5 years? Really, are Kenyans that helpless? Is our constitution that helpless that he must stay on for 5 years, even when he kills us, even when he offends the very basis of framework, which is the constitution that he's supposed to rule by? Because I think for me, yes, he was voted in, but it was on the basis that he would rule us according to the constitution. In the event that he does not do that, as we have demonstrated, I come from an education background, and I really feel sad because some of these issues don't get to be mentioned. We have not had another situation in this country for the last 15 years that so many children are home. We have got capitation grants that have not been sent to schools for quite a long time ago. We have a president who found a capitation of 22,000 per child per year. He has reduced it to 16,000, and he's not even sending it with fidelity without Parliament questioning him. Article 53 of the Constitution of this country grants the children of this country free and compulsory basic education. Who is this that comes and strips that off them with no question from anybody, sort of running it? If today he feels like reducing 10,000, reducing to, and even reducing it to 0, he has got no question. So I think really this is an opportunity that we really pray to God that we seize it, and we show the political class of this country that yes, it is a 5-year contract, but with conditions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet. Everybody who's joined us as we in the middle of the conversation, thank you for joining. This conversation is based on a petition that's been taken to court by 14 Kenyans who have come together under the umbrella of the Kenya Bora Tuitakayo, and they are seeking to exercise and to test the powers of this constitution. I am not part of the petitioners and I am not part of the movement, but I'm hosting this conversation because it's one of those interesting times that we are in. We have seen in terms of agitation for the recomposition of the IEBC because there are people who have said we'd like to see how we can recall a member of parliament. We have hosted on our show on Spice FM the people of Kabete who have started a signature collection exercise. Now, this one is another one which is more direct on removal of a president. So, what we know is that removal of a president that has been written in clear ink in the Constitution is found in Article 145, where a president is removed by impeachment, and this will require a member of the National Assembly, supported by at least a third of the members of the National Assembly, moving a motion for impeachment. And there are three grounds: gross violation of the Constitution. There are serious reasons for believing that the president has committed a crime under national or international law for gross misconduct. And if that is supported by at least two-thirds of the members of the National Assembly, then the Speaker of the National Assembly informs the Speaker of the Senate, and then it moves to the Senate, where the Senate conducts a hearing, and the president is given an opportunity to be heard by the Senate. And then the Senate, again, by two-thirds, if they vote yes to impeach, then the president will then stand impeached. Or if they don't get two-thirds of members of the Senate, the president stays in office. Or if the committee investigating this finds that the issues that have been raised are not substantiated, then the president also stays in office. But these 14 Kenyans are going to court and they're saying, we are the sovereign of the republic. We, under Article 1 of the Constitution, hold sovereign power, and we may exercise it directly or we may exercise it through our democratically elected leaders. And we've heard from the lawyers here, and what they're saying is we want to exercise that and other articles of this constitution, and moving to court to ask the court, can we hold a referendum to recall a president, to remove a president from office? That's why we're here. One of the other petitioners that is also on this call is Professor Fred Ogola. Let's hear from you. Prof, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eric. Thank you very much, all our listeners. I think this is an earth-shaking and groundbreaking petition, and that's why there are so many questions. So I'll just make the following submissions. We are being told that the constitution is being violated. That is true. And the state wants us to believe, especially politicians, that there is nothing we can do. And that's why they are trying to tell you, you can only act according to this way because that's what works for them. But Gen Zs have demonstrated to us that we can use we can't you cannot be able to use the table manners that they are giving us. That's why you saw they are completely mold breakers. Just they don't want to be confined by any other things. That's why they just went to the city and said, "What's happening? We are entering parliament. We are invading and occupying this place. Have you seen them giving police permits and the rest?" So politicians always want to confine us and want to make us believe there's nothing we can do beyond what is there. So what I'm trying to say that there's a constitution we have, but there is no constitutionalism. These are not my words. These are words of the likes of Yash Palgai, among other professors of law. So this, what's happening that let this petition that we are putting across be that petition that will advance the so-called constitutionalism. And just because we don't want to have legal jargon here, the constitutionalism means that the constitution alone does not secure or bring about constitutionalism. So the constitution we have might not. And we need to be courageous to bring that so-called constitutionalism. So let KBT, through the petitioners, create these precedents, because I'm sure why we are thinking it might not happen is that as no one has done it. And maybe let's be inspired by some of the guys Eliud Kipchoge, who says that human is not limited. I'm sure we are not limited by here. And these people are trying to tell us that our rights are limited. We are not. Our rights are not limited because of the fact that we are the one who caused these institutions even to exist. So we should not actually be really worried. So the main question this petition is going to answer, and I'm sure Cyprian has put it even clearer in other forums, that what do we do to a president or the presidency, because Gachagua is also there, that breaks the law but cannot be impeached by parliament? And even if he's told, he cannot listen. He thinks he's untouchable. Power has entered his head. He does not even understand where Kenyans are vis-a-vis where he is. Like a president whom people are crying about economic issues, for him, he has come up with the political prescription of putting opposition inside government. And I'm sure, Cyprian, there should be a violation there. I'm even finding ODM violating. So if in fact, if you can impeach opposition, I'm sure they should be impeached as well. So that question can only be addressed by the fact that the constitution is not impotent. The constitution is not helpless. The constitution is not hopeless before the leaders because of the fact that who creates them? First of all, God creates us. God creates us. God is the cause of causes, the first cause. Then, after causing, God causing us, we become Kenyans. With the Kenyan people, we give birth to our sovereignty. Our sovereignty gives birth to the constitution. The constitution gives birth to institutions, which is now state house, presidency, parliament, and the rest. So, how can your cause be helpless before you? It's impossible. So we believe that there's a mechanism, there's a legal infrastructure to do this. When you cannot keep the constitution that elevated you and put you in the office, then the very constitution should lower you. Because remember, when Gachagua and Ruto were even crying, "Don't kill my children," they were below, they were very below, and immediately they were declared president and deputy president elect. The constitution elevated them to that level. And by being sworn in, now they were at that level. So it is the very constitution that elevated them to that level, the instrument of the constitution. And the same instrument of the constitution should be able to lower them if they do not keep the constitution. And they saw that in the allegiance they took, in the execution of their office. So for that matter, everybody should know, and we should send this message, this petition, that you keep the constitution keeps you. You throw it away, it throws away. So the supremacy and the sovereignty must prevail now, and it should actually prevail forever, because this petition will be asking the questions that, can High Court, using the 5-judge bench that has been requested, set up by the Chief Justice, determine that these violations are, if they say yes, even if they are 10 or 15, that's enough. The second question is, I think between the Constitution and the president and deputy president, who is above the other? This is so obvious that even if you are a lawyer who hates KBT, you'll simply say that if you are a judge who hates KBT or hates Kenya, you'll just say the constitution is above. So if we violate your boss, which is the constitution, are you fit to be in office? Then you declare that you are not fit to be in office. But then the question comes, if you are fit, you are not fit to be in office, and in your office, is the constitution helpless just because there's no procedure like has been explained by Lampa? No, there should be a procedure which can be created, and even if it does not exist, this will create necessity. In fact, there's what you call the doctrine of necessity. If there's a necessity to do something, you do it. I'm a Catholic. Cyprian Nyamwamu here is a Catholic. The person who should do baptism is a priest. But if someone is dying next to me, I'm allowed to baptize them. If they happen not to die, then the priest will baptize them later. But if they die, they're considered to be in the kingdom of God. We must be in the kingdom of God as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the judge has said they are giving more time. We thought it was going to be soon, but nevertheless, we will be in Canaan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Gola. And just like Professor Migaya Ketch had explained earlier, I mean, this is doable. It's a substantive versus procedural issues. Professor Kibuda Kibwana is on this X Space tonight, and there's a request that, I mean, you have been requested to join in as a speaker, Prof. Join in at some point. Let's bring in Advocate Kibe Mungai, who's one of the advocates handling this matter. Advocate Kibe, are you here?
I'm here, Eric, and good evening, everyone, for the delay in joining in.
Karibu sana. I want to ask you now the procedure that you're seeking and what you're asking of the court. Okay. So number one, we've been told by Wakili Lempai there are several requests and pleas that you've taken to court. You're on the constitution of a bench and several matters. We have seen from the Constitution, Article 145, that if you were to impeach through Parliament, there would be certain thresholds that have to be met, so that you're not just removing a president whimsically, so to speak. In the way that you are approaching court, what safeguards are you seeking to use to remove a president? And what does the president get in terms of fair administrative justice? Does the president get to, and the deputy president, do they get to also come to court and be heard?
Thank you for that question. The starting point is that the first and second respondents in this case is actually the President Ruto himself and the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. And the approach that we have taken, and I've had some explanation of how it's supposed to go, is that when, for example, Parliament is the one that is conducting impeachment proceedings, what usually happens is there is an indictment by the National Assembly. If this indictment is successful, the Senate constitutes itself to try the president. And the president would have an opportunity, like in a normal court, to defend himself against accusation of either gross violations of the Constitution, abuse of power, incapacity, and such other reasons. Now, when therefore he is found guilty, the Senate in effect would be acting like a court. Now, for purposes of the direct procedure, the reason for using it is that the Constitution declares that the supreme authority, by saying that the sovereign power lies in the people, is another way of saying that the people are the supreme authority in the Republic of Kenya. And it is because of that, people being the supreme authority in the Republic of Kenya, that we elect the Parliament, members of Parliament, and we also elect the president and the deputy. So the normal law of agency, we are aware that the people, and President Ruto said that in his last speech before the last general elections, that the people have the right to hire and fire. So that the right to hire necessarily presupposes that you can fire. Since the President Ruto and his deputy were hired through the direct vote of the Kenyan people, it would follow that impeachment proceedings, they can be removed by the representatives of the people. And the Article 1 is clear that the people themselves can exercise sovereign power directly. The exercise of sovereign power directly in this regard would require them, like in this instance, to convince the High Court that indeed the president is either incompetent, has grossly violated the Constitution, and engaged in abuse of power. In the petition, and Cyprian has explained it, there are at least 36 instances in which the president has seriously violated the Constitution, including deployment of the army, including leasing to the Americans airfields in Lamu without following the due procedure, including engaging in the capture of Parliament, which has made it practically impossible for it to hold the government responsible, unlawful procurement of loans, and the general abuse of servant leadership to the extent that the people of Kenya have been taxed unfairly and oppressively, and this money has been misused. And this is what led recently to the people of Kenya, through the Gen Z, whom I commend, to demand that the Finance Bill 2024 could not be passed. Therefore, I wish to confirm that indeed the president will have an opportunity to come and defend himself. If he is found that there is even a single violation or abuse of power, then the IEBC would be required and would be entitled to hold a referendum so that the people of Kenya, as the ultimate judge in this process, can be able to determine, based on that finding of the High Court, whether his term in office should be terminated and therefore he is removed from office. But if the majority are in favor of him remaining in office, then he will remain in office. This, in my view, would be an important way and the first time in the world where this direct exercise of power is manifested this way. But let us also remember that Kenya was also the first one, because in the year 2004, and Cyprian was one of the petitioners, we went to court and convinced the High Court that you could not get a new constitution without a referendum. And the constitutions of Kenya, therefore, unlike any other constitution in this world, was adopted on the final vote that was taken. I think this was 4th or something of August, the year 2010, then promulgated on the 27th of August. And therefore, the sovereign power of the people, we want to leave the world because already the concept is accepted under our constitution, in which all elected officers do not have to be in office for 5 years. In the event that they violate the constitution or abuse power, they can be removed from office. And therefore, the notion that when I hear people say that you got a 5-year mandate, that is an ignorant and arrogant, because even parliament itself can impeach them. And if my agent or my servant, which parliament is, can be able to remove Ruto and Gachagua from office, then the masters of the ultimate authority, which is the people, can do the same thing. And it is important also to appreciate, I have heard today a lot of commentary in the advocates forum, people saying there is no express provision about how you can use the people for purposes of removal. But the simple question that you would answer that is this: in Britain, where they do not even have a constitution, when they wanted to leave the EU, the leaders of the EU say, since the political class cannot be able to agree themselves on the issue of removal, let us refer this issue to the supreme authority, which is the people. And the people of Britain voted for Britain to leave office. So in any democracy, the people of necessity are the supreme authority and can make any decision, including like in this case, where for some time it has been obvious that despite the fact that Kenya Kwanza government is incompetent, there is also the serious loss of legitimacy on the part of both the president and his deputy on their right to govern and capacity to govern in accordance with the Constitution of Kenya. Therefore, I am proud of the petitioner for this effort that they have taken. And I believe that we have an extremely strong case if I can compare that to the year 2004.
Wakili, let me ask you then, does this go through the normal court process where if you start at the High Court, then it can move to the Court of Appeal and then go to the Supreme Court? Does that mean that we have to exhaust all avenues of appeal?
The way it goes is this way, that, and remember, there is a right of somebody who is dissatisfied, whether the petitioners or the respondents, to go to the Court of Appeal. And the final appeal in this instance would be to the Supreme Court. It is my belief that except at the High Court level, where you may be able to take a little bit of more time, because that is where you are filing the bulk of the papers and defenses, any appeal arising from that does not have to take long. But in all this happening, the most important issue that would have to be considered is that now that the legitimacy of the president and his deputy to be in office has been questioned, it is in the interest of everyone, starting from the Chief Justice, the president himself, and the National Assembly, that this question is settled as quickly as possible. I am happy the High Court today gave directions of the filing of proceedings of responses, which should end on the 16th of August. But because the High Court is on vacation, we were given a date, something like 24th of September, which is a little bit far. But there is a procedure in law where we can move the High Court after 16th of August to beseech the High Court to ensure that this court is heard during the vacation. The vacation ordinarily would end on 15th of September, but because of the nature of this case and the need to settle the issue of legitimacy of the current government, this is a case that should be fast-tracked. Therefore, it is possible to have this matter settled with or without appeals before October this year, and we go to the vote. I believe in the end, the people of Kenya should be invited to have the referendum and let the people decide, as Kenneth Matiba used to say.
All right. So thank you very much. So there are several people on the chats who are asking the questions, and maybe I just want to start with this one. Mugambi is asking, from a strategy perspective, would it have been better to file the petition in the Supreme Court if this could then go through all these other avenues? Is it possible or is it not possible? Okile.
It is not possible. The direct answer is that the Constitution provides that the Supreme Court has a limited mandate. The only original jurisdiction the Supreme Court has is over the issue of either advisory opinions, number one, or number two, the presidential elections petitions. But in all the other matters to do with interpretation and the enforcement of the Constitution, the court of first instance is the High Court. And therefore, there was no other strategy that could have been used. The only strategy that is important here, and I believe we have, the petitioners have already asked that question and we agreed, is that a number of things can be done simultaneously. Even as we argue this matter in court, I told the petitioners that they can move ahead and to start preparing the people of Kenya for this petition, create referendum committees to coordinate this vote that we expect will take place in the soonest time possible, because a government that has got no legitimacy is dangerous. And here I need to say something, Eric, that when you have the problem of Sri Lanka, when you have the problem in the Sudan, it is a situation where governments that did not have legitimacy remained in power for so long, messed their economies without anything happening. In West Africa, the coup d'etats that keep happening there, when the new soldiers come, they always say, this government had no legitimacy. That is why we decided to intervene. Our country has been lucky since independence. We only had an attempted coup, a small one in 1971, and the other one in 1982, but none was successful. We do not want to have in Kenya a situation where the serious legitimacy questions that have been raised by the people, by the petitioners in this case, either would have to be sorted by the military or by an uprising of the general public like we saw with the recent Occupy Parliament. We would want this matter to be settled in a civilized manner, in accordance with the Constitution. We take a vote as soon as it is practicable, so that if Ruto and Gachagua have the majority of the people, they continue with that confirmation. If, as it appears to me and the petitioners, they have lost favor in the eyes of the people, then we take the consequences of that. They are removed from office and a new election is held, so that before the next general elections, we can have a legitimate government which can urge the people to lead them to get new jobs, to stop the humiliation of the Kenyan people, to tell them to go and scrub floors in Europe and in Saudi Arabia, and wash dirty people in Europe and the old. We want people to remain in Kenya, be engaged productively, and the Kenya to be a happy land for everybody. And if it is young men, to have enough money to marry and not to keep saying that the only thing they fear is porridge and marriage. Everybody should have some money to marry if they want. And I've seen very many young men demonstrating and saying, we are daily humiliated by our wives about what kind of men we are, and we can't even buy diapers. We do not want this humiliation of our young people to continue. And it is why we must have this referendum in the soonest time possible to get a responsible government that does not borrow money and steal it at the same time.
Thank you very much, Wakili. So we want to open up now to hear from other participants in this chat this evening. If you'd like to speak, I know there are several requests that are there. My co-host Muthiora is looking at them, and he'll admit you speakers one by one. And in some cases where Muthiora, you see that we have overflown in the number of speakers, you may drop some of the older speakers so we can then accommodate new ones. As we got there, Wakili, I've got to ask you another critical question here. So you are presenting charges, specific charges against Dr. William Ruto, the president, and separate specific charges against Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president. It's my assumption that you're asking the court to look at those charges per individual, and then each individual to come and present their response. If the judges find that there are sufficient grounds to remove against one and not the other, what happens? Do we then go to a referendum just to remove, let's say, the deputy president and leave the president in office, or the president and leave the deputy president in office?
Assuming this is my question, the answer to that is that we have the presidency. The presidency, even as accepted by the Supreme Court, it means the president and his deputy. The only instance in which Deputy President Gachagua appears alone is where he said Kenya is a country of shareholders, and these shareholders will have to take all the positions, and then everybody else will get leftovers. Now, he was rebuked by the president sometime afterwards. But even as that was happening, we have set out grounds to demonstrate that though the president says one thing, his actions are consistent 100%. In all the offices, when you go to the to the principal secretaries, when you go to the heads of parastatals, the main appointing authority is the president himself through his own ministers. And you have seen extreme bias and prejudice against certain other communities that are supposed not to have supported Kenya Kwanza. And therefore, we do not envisage a situation in which one of them would be found not to have committed, because the work of the deputy president is to ensure that you advise the president or to be able to govern in accordance with the constitution, so that in a situation where it is found that the president has done something unlawful, it is presupposed that he had received some advice which was also inconsistent with the constitution from his deputy. And therefore, I think this is a scenario where most of them are likely to sink together or survive together. But I do not see in the 36 instances how they will survive at least 10 of them.
Okay.
I'm confident they cannot survive 10.
Eric, I have a question. I don't know how to, what is the procedure for requesting a mic? May I ask the question?
Go ahead, Prof.
So you see, my understanding is that, so there are two things. Yeah? The one is that Article 1 gives us a substantive right as the sovereign to exercise, to govern ourselves. But the Constitution does not give us a procedural mechanism for exercising that right. So that is on one hand. On the other hand, there is the question of the performance or lack of performance of the current executive. So is the petition about the former, asking the court, please, we know we have a substantive right, which is that we can exercise our power directly. And as Kibe is saying, that power can be exercised through appointment and removal. So please give us a procedural mechanism for doing that. Or is the petition about telling the court that these people have not performed and we want to prove that they are not performed, which is why we are enumerating these 36 instances? I think, in my respectful opinion, that the latter route is a slippery one. The more solid route is to go and ask the court for a procedural mechanism. As I said earlier, the people really do not need a reason to recall their executive, if they so wish. As long as we're able to say that, look, give us some procedural thresholds. What is the threshold? Do we need 60%? What is the standard practice, for example? And this has been done before. The recall of a president is a very, very popular mechanism for exercising power directly in Latin America. So I just want to get a sense from the petitioners, what is it that you're asking the court to do?
Very good
Because
question.
I think my sense is that I think asking the court for a procedure is the way to go. Thank you.
Very good question, Professor
Let
Migai.
me answer that question. Erica, that's hi, Professor Migai. Thank you for that question. Now, the direct answer, and thank you for recognizing that Article 1 establishes the substantive right of people to exercise their sovereign power directly. Now, on the procedure, I do not think that you need any procedure beyond what is already provided. Why do I say so? Article 3 of the Constitution says the people have a right to go and defend the Constitution. Article 88 says that one of the mandates of IEBC is to hold elections and referendum. And therefore, there is already in existence the fact that because IEBC exists, and their job is to hold referendum. The only question that is, what is it that we are going to hold this referendum on? And the referendum in this case would be on the removal. So that the moment you have accepted that it would be for removal, you go back like to the situation in 2004, even when the law was not this developed, where the High Court basically said that a new constitution would need to receive the approval of the people. And that was to be through a referendum. Therefore, there is nothing more, because the Kenya Constitution expressly recognizes a referendum and it provides that it will be held by IEBC. And the rules of the referendum is simple majority, that the people who come out to vote, if the majority are in favor, then the motion is carried. Therefore, I do not think that you need any referendum whatsoever. The only thing that would have been required in a situation, we've been talking about the need to have a referendum law. It has taken forever because there are just a few referendum provisions in the Elections Act, which we are viewed to be inadequate. But it doesn't follow that if a law that ought to be put in place is not in existence, that a constitutional right would not be exercised. Constitutional rights can be exercised because in 2004, without a referendum act or the provision of referendum in the law, the High Court established the idea of a referendum, and it was held in 2005, giving birth to ODM. And in 2010, we also had the final referendum that gave us the 2010 Constitution. So it would be a false argument for anyone to argue that there is no procedure. There is an intact procedure already in existence. And the mandate to carry the referendum is on the IEC and the Constitution.
Thank you. Thank you, Wakili Kibe Mugai. Let's hear from other speakers. I know I can see Fred Ogola, one of the petitioners. You've raised your hand. You want to speak, but let's hear first from Dr. Kasim. Dr. Kasim, you have the mic.
Okay, thank you. I wish to seek some two clarifications.
Kasimu, you are very faint. We can't hear you.
Okay, now you can get me.
Very, very faintly.
Okay, I have some two suggestions and some clarification. You can get me clear now?
You're very faint, Kasim. I think just do something about your mic.
Yeah.
Let's mute you for a bit, and then let's hear first from Nelson. Nelson Amenya, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Latif, for this space. Mine is just to ask a few questions regarding this exercise that is being undertaken to for a referendum to recall the president and the deputy. And I just want to draw your attention to in 1937, Franklin D. Roosevelt, he was a very popular president. And when he when he was elected president, at that moment, there was the Great Depression, and he was trying to make policies to shield Americans from the Great Depression. And one of the things he did was to come up with something called the deal. So you can compare this to what President Ruto is trying to do, like the SHIF or the housing, affordable housing. And at some point, some people went to court. And when they went to court, some of the proposals from the deal were struck down by the courts. And then Franklin D. Roosevelt was very angry at this. And what he did, he tried to ask, it was called the court parking plan. So he tried to make the Supreme Court judges to become, to be more, so that it's easier to deal with them, because less judges means that it's harder to deal with them. So basically, he wanted to have a little bit more control over the judiciary. And well, obviously, it was rejected, and people said, no, the president cannot have absolute power over the judiciary. There has to be a balance of power between the institutions. So, in my view, what we are trying to do basically is to remove the individuals, President Ruto and his deputy, but we forget that the institutions we have in Kenya are the ones that that there is a big challenge. The executive is in bed with parliament, the National Assembly. Basically, if President Ruto wants to pass anything, parliament is at his disposal, and it's only a little bit in the judiciary where it's a little bit more independent. We can see sometimes they reject like, for example, now we are about to petition for this JKIA deal to be interjected. So perhaps it will be stopped because the judiciary is a little bit more independent. But the National Assembly is not independent at all. And as you all know, the absolute power obviously corrupts anyone. And today, if we remove President Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua from power, the next president we will put, because of the same institutions that we have not addressed, they will become the same. The power that they will wield will corrupt them, and it will be a cycle. So for me, I'm trying to ask, should we try and change the system and the institutions? Because in my point of view, the issue is not the person or the president. The issue is the institution. And you can see from this story I gave you from 1937 of Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was a great leader.
So Nelson,
But
let me interrupt you.
yeah,
So what are you suggesting?
for me, it would
What
be
do you
better
propose?
if my proposal is to first of all look at the institutions we have. We need to have strong institutions that will have systems of restraint to the presidency so that they cannot just do what they want. And if we do that, we will not care who's president, because there'll be enough systems to restrain their power. So this is my
Okay.
proposal.
So how do we do that, Nelson?
Eric, can I say something on that so that there's no
Yes, you
confusion
can.
whatsoever? Do I have your permission,
Go
Eric?
ahead.
I want to quote what Professor Kibwana has said nearly 70 times since we passed the Constitution. that the new constitution did not bring a new culture. What it did is that we have been seeing change of form. We have been creating institutions, but the tradition and the culture never changed. What the 25th of June Gen Z revolution did was to say, this is the end of that old culture of KANU. The constitution we created and promulgated in 2010 requires that it is approached and upheld so that there is a new culture which can be able to produce a new country. So what my brother has just said there is completely wrong, I have to say that, so that nobody leaves this space with any confusion whatsoever. Even Parliament from 25th of June going forward, if it tries to again usurp and defy the will of the people of Kenya to impose laws and policies that are against the constitution, it will be overrun again and again so that future institutions and occupants will obey the constitution. So it's not true that we need to change institutions. No more change is required. The form is in place. A new culture is what has been set out on 25th of June.
Thank you, Cyprian. You quoted Professor Kivuta Kibwana. Prof is here now and has got speaker rights. Prof, let's hear from you briefly as we pick other callers. I know there's a Gidi on the line. Samuel, you also had requested to speak. Dr. Kasimu, you had wanted to speak as well, and many others. If you can also ask a question through the comment section, I will read out some of those questions or comments later as we continue this conversation. Professor Kivuta Kibwana.
Eric, can I finish before Professor comes in?
Okay, Nelson, quickly, a short one.
Yeah. So my solution was to basically recall the MPs and have MPs who represent the people. And this way, when the National Assembly is strong, then all other institutions will follow suit.
Thank you. We hear you. Prof. Kibwana?
Thank you very much, Eric and Mutiora. I want to start by saying that Article 1, Article 3, and beginning with Article 1 says if delegated authority, the people's delegated authority is abused, how do citizens enforce their direct power? If they elected, for example, in terms of the executive, can they de-elect? How do they withdraw their delegated authority when they deem that there's been abuse of power, lack of legitimacy, incompetence, going against the constitution, and even what Professor Migai said, when the executive is not serving them, Article 1, which talks about the interpretation of the constitution. And the people also exercise their direct power through elections, through public participation, through referendum. And now I think we are focusing more on other direct action, like going to court to withdraw them to an elected president and deputy president. And I like what Professor Migai was saying, that there is a substantive right in Article 1 and Article 3, but there isn't a direct procedural way of achieving it. So that this social contract doctrine, which has been translated in the Constitution to Article 1, there isn't now the way in which, apart from elections, public participation, the usual referenda, even a referenda for the Constitution, there isn't that direct way. Now, I think
I will not get hold on. Cyprian, please mute.
Challenge is successful, I think there are certain things that one has to look at. I was wondering if it was, for example, something going to the Supreme Court to seek an opinion. That's one way, an advisory opinion from the Supreme Court about what is the procedural way of enforcing Article 1 outside the elections, public participation, the usual referenda, including referenda constitution. So that if you are asking the court to do two things simultaneously, to give you the procedural way and use that procedural way to and I think that's where Migai is having some problems of, is the court going to be ready to do both, or is it safer to do stage one, the procedural right, and then proceed subsequently? But
I'm not sure whether I'm the one who has lost Prof. Can you all hear me? Am I here?
We can hear you, Eric, but I think we've lost Prof. Kibwana.
Okay. So let me bring in Samuel. Samuel, you wanted to raise a point or ask a question. Samuel, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance. First of all, thank you for all the speakers who have spoken today. Thank you, guys. We know you are a busy people, but coming to educate our people is very nice and is very honorable of you. First of all, to the petitioners, that's a very brave move, very brave. But my question is, I'm going to give a suggestion, then I'm going to ask my question that I really want to ask. We all know that justice system in particular in the Republic of Kenya is rotted to the core. We cannot trust the justice system, to be honest. We have doctors of law here, we have lawyers, and we respect you guys, but the justice system is rotted. It has never served the common mwananchi. Even if we take this movement to court, it's a good idea, but these people, as long as Ruto is still in office where he is right now, there's nothing is going to happen. Nothing. Like that one I am. So here is my question to the professor and the doctor. Is there any way we can amend the Article 1 and the Article 3 to be, because the article, the first, the sovereign of the people, if there is a way we can amend this constitution for us to be able to exercise that right as a sovereign, because even after I read, it doesn't give a clear of how the people can participate directly themselves, apart from the either electing or like the constitution is not so much clear. To the professors here, how can we amend it to make sure that we can exercise our power? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So the question is how we can amend. Let me pick a couple of more speakers as well. And I want to balance gender here. Apart from the two ladies who are part of the petitioners who've spoken, we've not heard from other ladies. And I think, Mudiora, you can also help me look for more and more ladies who would like to speak, and we give them the mic. Laika, let's hear from you.
Laika? Sorry, guys. I'll speak in a moment. I'll be right back. Sorry.
All right. Okay, Laika. Dr. Kasim, you had started speaking, so let me just give you this mic before I bring in Hannah. And Kasim, I don't know what's up with you.
Now you can get me.
You have two. No, Kasim.
Can you get me?
Kasim, I think you have got two gadgets that are on.
No, it's only one.
Okay, go ahead. A brief one, although you're very faint.
Okay, I have a suggestion and a question. is it possible to use Article 257 to amend, we have a popular initiative to amend the constitution so that we include a clause where we can recall a president through a referendum. Then number two, if you look at Article 257, it talks of 1 million registered voters. Is that part not in violation of the constitution? Because if we talk of 1 million registered, what about those people who are above 18 and they have an ID card and they are not registered voters? They cannot participate in amending the constitution. That's my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have the Wakilis answer that. Please, lawyers in the house, you can take this down, and also some of the petitioners, you can come in. Hannah?
Thank you, Eric, and your co-host, and everybody on the platform. Yango Simengi, I just got one crucial question, which is, as it is, up to where we are today, we have a constitution, yes, but constitutionality is not being practiced. The constitutions is not, nobody is obeying by those constitutions. We've seen that left, right, center. Now, can we not get the existing constitution to deliver for the many and not the few before we say we want to fiddle with the constitution? Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Mohammed Duliye. Mohammed, you are here? Okay. Fred Ogola.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eric, and all the listeners. So I'll go to answer, first of all, the question that came from Kasim by saying that
Hi, Eric.
KBT.
Eric, can you hear me?
Yes, Mohammed, just hold on a minute. We'll come back to you.
Okay.
So thank you very much. So I'm saying to say that KBT has got very many initiatives inside it. So concerned citizens under KBT also has a bill which was to be launched on 1st of June, Madaraka Day, that can amend the article, the around Article 257 of the Constitution to give a mechanism on which you can actually recall the president directly through a referendum. But we are still saying that even the Constitution as it is can still have that mechanism. So we are agreed we are going to have what is called land, sea, and air attack on that status to make this happen. And looking at what Hannah has said, I also want to respond shortly by saying that, you can say you can enforce the Constitution. And today we gave a statement and we said that no Kenyan can get his right until we have the right person in State House. And we cannot have the right person in State House if we cannot remove the wrong person and replace with the right person. And lastly, we have to send a precedence that there is no guarantee that once you win an election or a term, you can stay forever. And that message will also go to anybody seeking an office, knowing that you stay as your performance.
Eric, is it my connection or we've lost communication here?
I can hear Prof.
We can hear we can hear Professor Fred Ogola very, very clearly. So I don't know what the challenge could be, but Professor Ogola is very clear.
Yes, indeed he is.
All right.
So I'm just concluding by saying that we also need to send a precedent so that nobody can ever come to office thinking about 5 years. You have to be as good as your last assignment. So as you are, even for us home, we are husbands. And I'm sure women are in this platform. Women, if we don't perform tonight, tomorrow, we are not taken with the results we performed last year. So everybody must know that every assignment, you must keep your marriage vows. Just like if you're a head of state, you must ensure you execute as a head of state in every function, every 30 seconds of your work, and every 60 seconds of your work, every 60 minutes of an hour, and every 24 hours of a day, 7 days in a week, and 365 days in a year. That is how it is to be presidential. And I want to insist that we should not worry about the mechanism. Sovereignty, the Article 1, I'm writing a commentary. The sovereign power, you don't have even to be told in details how to do it. You should just know you have it and it is superior. And that's what I'm telling you. Gen Z told us that in very unclear terms. I even said earlier, they don't have to send you notification. Because why should the owner of your house of the house tell you? Even Jesus in the story of the brides, he will come at an hour that the brides do not know. So just be ready. So if you're a head of state, be ready. We will come at an hour that you do not know. We won't specify that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Well, yeah.
Thank you very much, Eric. Mine is not about the law. I'm not a lawyer, and there are better lawyer. There are people who are very good in law who are in the room. Guys like Migaya Kech, my very good friend and classmate and deskmate and housemate. We have, of course, Professor Kivuda Kibwana. I can see also people like Harvey. Mine is just about this whole thing and how, Gen Z are handling it. Look, I think this requires a lot of patience. And as a father of a Gen Z, I don't think that is something Gen Zs are very maybe good at. What is going to happen is these things are not done in a very fast manner the way everybody thinks they would happen. We're in Kenya, we live in Kenya, we grew up in Kenya, we know what happens. My fear is that there is going to be a lost opportunity if people go about it the wrong way. Why am I saying this? I think the best way to bring about change is through the ballot. And if Gen Zs want to bring change in this country, they have to start organizing themselves. They have to put the infrastructure in place. They have to form, movements. They have to register. They have to mobilize. They have to give people IDs. They have to exert all this energy in that direction. We've got only 3 years or even less left to the ballot. There are institutions that basically are very vital in elections, like IEBC. They have to be involved. They have to, yes, like the issue of finance bill. I said, I remember, I don't know if you remember my tweet, Eric, and everyone else, in 2023, I said this thing is sumu. It's going to haunt this administration. And that was because of the housing levy and other things. And I mean, eventually it was 1 year late, but it came to pass. Now, saying when you go to things like finance bill, you have the right, and it's something that affects you immediately. So I actually supported the finance bill and basically the protests against the finance bill. You can use protests for events or things that you don't want at that particular time. But this issue of, let's remove the president, let's recall the president, let's do a referendum. Yes, okay, you will do it. You'll spend a lot of time on it. You might succeed, you might not succeed. If you succeed, another guy who behaves the same way as the past presidents will come on board. Are you going to keep on doing the same things all the time? The big problem we have is a generational issue. The people who, I would even say, ruled us, basically, have got totally different view in life. So if you want to bring a proper change, I think the best way to go about it is through the ballot And the only way you can do that is if you start preparing now. What I can foresee, and a lot of things I've said basically which came to pass, is all this noise. You have this protest, you have the tear gas. The government is going to fight back. By the time you say, I'm going to remove a president from office, my friend, so many things will go bad. And even if you succeed, and for you to restart this country's economy and everything else, it will continue to hurt you. So the best way to approach this is to start early. Put some of this energy into mobilizing, organizing, go get the right candidates at every level, MCA, MPs, governors, the presidency, everywhere. And then you might not even get the presidency. You might not get anything. You might get 50 MPs, 20 MPs. It doesn't matter. That itself is a start. It's good start for change. If you succeed in changing, of course, the presidency, that's also fine. My worry is people are going to spend a lot of time about nothing, about wasting their time on how are we going. Ruto must go. We have to do this. We have to do this. Then you find out it's 2027, and then what happens?
Thank you, Mohammed.
People go to elections, and then you start again. So that's my 25 cents on this.
Thank you, Elie. Can I ask you the question? Number one, referendum is a ballot as well. But also number two, can all those things happen simultaneously? One, for jurisprudence, just finding out whether if you have a presidency or a legislature that's not responding to the wishes of the people, how do the people exercise that power? And I see that one would be what would come out of this particular petition in court.
I think on my part, I lost Eric. I can see that he's talking, but I can't hear him.
Can the others hear me?
I can hear him correctly, Cyprian. I don't know.
Yes, I can hear you, Eric.
Okay, so Elia, you got my question. Just answer it briefly. Can these two processes happen simultaneously? Organizing for the next election, but at the same time going to court to set and understand the procedures and testing the Constitution on Article 1?
Yes, of course it will. But again, the more important one is, I think, the one I talked about. I think the court one, if it comes out successful, that's fine. But the other one cannot fail. I mean, if you don't do anything now, if you don't start a process to organize yourself, to belong to start, you need to form movements, political parties. You need to organize. You need to mobilize. You need to even fundraise. You need to do a lot of things to create, a real movement that can shake the country. I mean, if you go to the court one, that's fine. But again, our courts, there's some court cases going on for 10 years. People can appeal. It will go to, Court of Appeal, and then you go to the Supreme Court. By that time, it's, you find yourself 6 months to an election. Then you find out that you have nothing, that you have not done anything. Then the same people will basically go and do their tribal, emotions, and then you find another president, in office, and then you have to go to the streets again. You can't bring change. You can review, for example, things like the finance bill. You can do an event. Event by event for protests, but you cannot. You can also protest, maybe to bring change, to remove even a president from an office. But then, what are you going to achieve after that? What will happen if you don't have these systems, your processes in place? You are not ready yourself to go into to assume office, because what it looks like now is people want change, but they don't want to go in there themselves and do that change. It's very hard to teach, an old dog new tricks. So if you think as a Kenyan youth or a Gen Z that I am going to revolt every time, and these people who are 60 or 70 or 80 years old in office, and you're going to allow them to be in office, and you will change their behavior, You might remove one, you bring in another one, it's going to be the same. The best and most sustainable change is if the Gen Zs themselves plan now to take over power through the ballot.
Okay, point made. Point made. Thank you very much, Mohammed. I want to pick up other callers. I know we're already getting into those hours where many of the people who are on the show will start dropping off, going to sleep. So I'd like to have a lot of this conversation while they're still up. Giddy, you have been queued for quite a while. Now is your chance. Please speak. All right, Richard Kemoy.
Okay, thanks, Eric and Muthiora. Let me begin by appreciating and thanking Professor Migaya Cage, my teacher. I'd like to just, request you, Eric, to ensure that every speaker, sticks to the subject. I think we've been, deviating quite a bit. Now, if we're going to talk about this particular petition, we are looking and seeking for ways to exercise powers under Article 1. There are other provisions of exercising, universal suffrage, and that's why I'd like to disagree with Mohammed, because if that were the only option, then there would be no need for Article 1. Let me emphasize that, and I think Professor Ketch had said this, that I think the correct approach or the more beneficial approach is to seek to know from the courts how can the people exercise this power under Article 1, because we all agree there is no procedure, rather than asking the court to agree with you with the reasons and the facts and the evidence why we think the president and the deputy have lost legitimacy, so that we don't, using Professor Migai's approach, question, thinking that is a slippery road. Suppose they don't agree with you. So why don't we just leave it to the court to tell us how do we exercise this power? Okay, is it through a constitutional assembly plus a referendum, or just another way? Thank you.
Thank you. Mudge Rolf.
Yeah, good evening. I hope I'm clear.
You are, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, petition. What I understand at the moment is that, okay, if the courts would then give guidance to the unclear situation in Article 1, my assumption would be that it would take us back probably to a constitutional amendment. And for me, I think a constitutional amendment when there's a crisis is not a good idea. So my suggestion would be that we have a series, or we get to a position where we have a real single serious dictatorship in the country, and the dictatorship should be the current constitution, because we are not living up to it. The president comes up with the Defense Act and later goes to, seek the approval. So how can we? Of course, we can test. We need to test the constitution and seek for guidance, but we're not going to get direct solutions. That is not going to happen with the amendment. But until we reach that point where we know what to do, I'd really like us to get ways of even having accountability, because the current government is doing so many things that are very unconstitutional. And so how do they get away with it? Because now today we are really together here and want to talk about improvement, but we see a lot of things they do. Mudavadi, his office is unconstitutional and so many things. So how do we have a scenario whereby any president knows they have to really just go by the only dictatorship that should dictate a country, and that's the constitution. Finally, I'd like to say that we have a very good constitution. As we see, it's airtight, almost airtight, because if you want to do it according to the articles where the National Assembly would then impeach the president and everything. You see that we have an orderly way. It's good that we have such an orderly way, because otherwise, the example I like to use is, if we have, for example, a war general coming over from wherever and they want to take over, we should be happy that our constitution doesn't allow that. So my point, let's try to have some accountability as we wait. But I'm also looking forward to see how that can be changed. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you, Maj. Thank you, Maj. And just to clarify, that the petition before court is not seeking to amend the constitution. It is seeking for the court to declare that there is grounds and a procedure for going to a referendum to recall a president and a deputy president. So what the lawyers have told us, Kibe Mungai and lawyer Lempa, that they are seeking, plus the petitioners, the 14 of them, is they want the court to directly say that, the people of Kenya can recall their president using Article 88, where the IEBC has the powers to conduct a referendum. Okay. I know, Prof, you've been wanting to speak for a bit, but so you can speak now, respond to a couple of the issues raised, Professor Ogola, and then we'll hear from Lucy Shege.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Eric and listeners. I think why it is critical that this petition is done, even if we forget about the issue of mobilization, like Gulay has said, is that if we do not defend this constitution, the raping, the maiming, and the destruction of this constitution will continue unchecked. And in fact, I wrote an article on the making of a one-party state. Even what has just happened this evening or afternoon, you might even find we go back to one-party state, because the people said they fought for democracy. What they have done today shows that they have actually can reverse it overnight. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy with what Eric you said before, that we can actually do this simultaneously and they are not mutually exclusive. I don't want to go divert, because I know Kenya Bora Twikatayo is also concerned about doing the same mobilization you're talking about. Cyprian can talk about this in the next subsequent activities. Maybe that's why it will be nice to talk more about KBT. But we're just focusing on this substantive matter. I'm sure that the declaration that we are waiting for today, I can celebrate there's a win already done, because normally the judge is not forced to say that this matter will be heard like this. If he knew that there was crap inside this case, he could have just easily said that this is not admissible or this cannot happen. So for us, I'm happy. Let's celebrate what we have won today. First of all, to file this petition, it's taken a lot of effort. It's been filed. Secondly, it's been actually been allocated to a judge. Thirdly, that the judge has given direction, and then we are waiting for more direction. So as far as I'm concerned, the big step has been done, and
Okay.
the bigger step needs to be done as well.
Asante. Lucy? Lucy, you may unmute your mic. Nutritionist Lucy Shege. Not able to hear us? Okay, so we've been having Kitonye queued up to speak. Giddy Blackman, that's your Twitter name. Please speak now. Also not able to come in. All right, so there's some issues that have been raised by a previous speaker. In fact, who said, okay, do we really trust that this thing can go through the courts and that the system will not be manipulated in any way, that justice will be served as justice is desired to be served? I want to ask one of the petitioners, just a citizen, Janet, what do you feel here? Do you have the confidence? Do you feel that the issues being raised here are merited? Janet Modoni or any other of the petitioners, you can speak.
I can come in, Eric, if you can hear me. Can you?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I want to say that we have seen that on 25th of June, the people of Kenya focused on the executive and the judiciary and told them that they must do things the right way. On that day, they even went to the Supreme Court to send a message to the Supreme Court and the judiciary that hearing and listening to the people of Kenya who are the Supreme is very important. We are taking this matter to the court at a time when the court is being reminded that it is the ultimate guardian of our constitution. I want to say, let us not operate on the basis of fear or of doubt. The case that we have filed, as Wakili Kibe has said, is a very strong one. And the grounds are actually extremely imperious. So it is necessary that we do the public information and the civic mobilization as we prepare the country for the outcome, which is to defend the Constitution and to actually ensure that the sovereignty of the people is enforced. I would say that it is now up to the judiciary to tell us on matters of law, what is it that we have not demonstrated that the Constitution has been violated. And when we know that Article 165 requires that the High Court is the one which has to defend and interpret the Constitution. We are extremely positive. We are very confident. And all the other issues that are being raised about 2027 are in order, and we can be able to do the same, the two of them simultaneously. Thank you very much.
Asante sana, Cyprian. One of the political questions that has, of course, been asked outside of this conversation, and I've got to bring it here, is on the organization, Kenya Bora Tuitakayo, out of the 14 petitioners. First, who is funding this petition? How are you financing it? Who's paying these wakilis? Kibe Mungai is a seasoned lawyer. Doesn't come cheap.
Can I speak to that directly?
Yes.
Yeah, let me speak to that very directly because Kibe Mungai has just disclosed that he was our lawyer in the Njoya case for NCEC, and even before the Njoya case in 2004, which is now 20 years, he had been representing NCEC pro bono, having been working at, Dr. Gibson Kamau Kuria's farm, the likes of Professor Kivuda Kibwana, the likes of Justice William Otunga, who are actually the founders of NCC. These are lawyers who have given their lives to the work of ensuring that Kenya is established as a democracy. The second thing, and finally, is that Kenya Bora is a self-funding movement and a network of patriotic citizens of Kenya. We've continued to work directly to fundraise resources that are needed to achieve convening whatever work that is needed. And the fact that a lot of the 16 lawyers are actually pro bono lawyers, including Lempa, who is on this call, tells you that there's a remnant of many lawyers who did work even during the Mandamano, who are members of LSK, who offered to do this work pro bono and for free. We don't need anybody to fund us to defend the Constitution as we are required by Article 3 of the Constitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cyprian. Wakili Kibe Mungai.
Eric?
Yes, hold on, Janet.
Yes.
I wish to confirm that my colleague...
Kibe, there's something not okay with your phone.
Hear me?
Yeah, if you're
me now?
if you're using an earpiece, yes, now it's better. Try.
Okay. So the point I was making is that I confirm that when you are, the call of patriotism requires every person where it is something where you have some speciality and capacity to serve your country to do that with or without pay. This particular initiative by the particular petitioners, they wanted a lawyer and a group of them who would lead in ensuring that the important connection and the question that kept on being asking, that Jay-Z are pushing the country into a crisis, and is that true or not? I confirm to the petitioners their beliefs that the Constitution of Kenya does indeed provide a procedure for the direct exercise of the sovereign power without any amendment whatsoever, because we already have IEBC, we had 2 previous referendum. Therefore, it is possible to do what we are doing. The question that was asked by a gentleman about the fact that they do not believe in the courts and their capacity to do justice, I think it may not be entirely fair to the courts for 2 reasons. Number one, the fact that we have a referendum at all in Kenya, it has its genesis not in parliament, but in the court, the High Court in the Joya case. Number two is that we have a new constitution that ultimately is traceable to the courts. During this series of events, we have a situation whereby the Inspector General have tried to declare that maandamano are illegal. The court gave orders requiring that maandamano can go on. And there were also orders where the police were told you cannot use certain weapons, but unfortunately, they have not followed that. Therefore, it is my belief that we need to try the court. There is a lot of goodwill. I need to say that I know very many good judges, people like Judge Bajanja, who are my classmates. They are decent people and people who have been involved in the struggle for human rights and constitutionalism. Therefore, I have the full confidence that we have a good case, the High Court of the Republic of Kenya, that we have a referendum so that the serious question of legitimacy and incompetence and the violations of law that have been taking place can be addressed by the people of Kenya in a referendum now that it is obvious. Parliament was captured a while back by Kenya Kwanza, and the situation is now likely to be worse now that some people from ODM have decided to join Kenya Kwanza in making the situation worse. Therefore, I urge everybody to keep the faith. We have a constitution that is respected by lawyers, by all of us who are on this platform today, and I believe by the judges. Mbele iko sawa.
Respond to this issue, Kibe Mugai, that it has been raised by Professor Migai Akech, it has also been raised by Professor Kivuda Kibwana and others, I think. You are adamant that the procedure is provided for in the Constitution on people exercising their power directly. Then there's the other school of thought that maybe this procedure is not clear. Probably what you could do is also handle one prayer in the Supreme Court, constitutional interpretation is their procedure, as you're seeking the other route in the High Court. Does this make sense?
Yeah, the direct answer to that question, starting with the Supreme Court, the fact is that as an individual, as petitioners, you do not have a right to go for advice of your opinion in the Supreme Court. And therefore, for the petitioners who are my clients, cannot be able to exercise that right, go and seek that advice of opinion. It is a limited right. Number two, and I believe we shall have a more technical forum to discuss this, is that this issue of referendum, a referendum law, as I said, in an ideal situation, we should have a referendum law. But a referendum law would be a law that is based on the recognition that the Constitution has provided for it. Let us give an example. The right under Article, I believe, 37 of the protest and picketing, there is no law that provides for it. But we have been going to the maandamano based directly on the Constitution. Therefore, the apprehension that there is no procedure would not be correct, because we have IEBC, and it is the responsibility of IEBC to conduct referendum. And we have already held two. So the anxiety that is there, I insist, has got no basis, provided there is a law saying who is supposed to conduct referendum, and the substantive right exists in Article 1. And I believe all those colleagues you have mentioned are friends of mine. We should have hope one of these days, and I will allay their fears.
Okay.
There is no gap.
Thank you, Kibe Mungai. So, Prof. Migai and Kibwana, chai has been offered. Now, Janet, you have a hand up, and then we'll hear from Mugambi. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like us to conclude this conversation shortly. So these are like final submissions, and then we'll come back to the petitioners, and Wakili Lempa will close for us. Janet?
Thank you very, very much, Eric. And I really want us to learn a lot from what the Gen Zs have taught us. And I pick from them 3 principles. And one of them is the principle of volunteerism. Having been a player in the political sector, if we do not insist on volunteerism and insist that to take part in everything, there has to involve money, a lot of things would not have been possible if there was all that money involved in the organization of the Gen Zs. And that is why you're seeing, the ruling class wondering who is funding the Gen Zs. But I am aware a lot of them were funding their own activities. A lot of them were just volunteering to do a lot of things. And we need to be challenged by that. And people need to believe that even in processes like these ones, there are lawyers that act pro bono, there are lawyers that are, and other professionals that are willing to do anything, for free, to just volunteer their expertise for the sake of the cause. The other thing is about us demanding thorough accountability, like we have learned with the Gen Zs, without making excuses. That our codes are ABCD. So what do we do? Do we die? Do we stop trying? Do we stop challenging? Do we stop expecting more? What do we do? And the third one is about patriotism. The belief, and the want for a better country, without so much looking at the gain that we have towards that end. Because a lot of these expectations are what has bred the political situation that we have, that for anybody, and that's why people are not even believing that when we say that there can be new organizations, people are wondering, where would you get crazy monies? Because people believe that for you to be a president or to vie as a president in this country, you must have billions and billions of money. I put you to test. Even if you have served for 10 years as a member of parliament, how would you be able to accumulate 2 billion unless you have stolen? We know the salaries that they earn and the expectations that they have from people. So I think also some of these processes are part of educating citizens that we are part of this mess, we are part of this problem, unless we are thoroughly patriotic, unless we demand total accountability, unless we are ready to embrace volunteerism, we are not going to change this country, Eric. So for me, I really believe that even if this process we are engaged in might not yield our expectation, I know it will achieve a lot in terms of telling and shaking the political class to know, hey, the 5-year mandate is not guaranteed. There is something that citizens of this country must do. And therefore, I totally believe that it is not an exercise in futility. It is an exercise that as citizens of this country, we must rally behind so that we get the impact that we desire. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much, Janet. Mugambi, you want to contribute? Mugambi Nandi.
Thank you very much, Eric, and everybody else on the platform. I'll begin by first saluting fallen comrades who have given their blood, their lives, so that we may have a better Kenya. And then I'll go straight to my contribution today, and I think that it is necessary to get an opinion or a declaration from the High Court, since Kibe says we cannot go to the Supreme Court, regarding the exercise of the power given in Article 1 and 2. And I am thinking, looking at Article 255 and 256, the Constitution actually envisages two types of referenda. If you look at Article 255, 1 and 2, which is about amendments which include the term of the office of president, that particular referendum is distinguished from the referendum envisaged in Article 255.3, which is the one that goes through the county assemblies. So I think, most of you might already know, I'm not a constitutional litigation lawyer, but I'm throwing this out for us to think about, and specifically to my friend Kibe and others, to think about looking at the distinction between the referendum as stated in Article 255, 1 and 2, and the referendum that goes through the county assemblies in Article 255, Sub-Article 3. The next thing I would like to say is that while I agree with Welie that it is important for Gen Zs to have structures and things like that, I don't think it is priority at the moment, because it is possible to elect sound people into public office as independent candidates, or even as members of existing political parties. What I think is probably more important is to push for certain important amendments to the Constitution before the next election, whether it's 2027 or before, because one of the things Gen Zs have complained about, and I agree with them, is the cost of government, the size of government. If we agree that we are overrepresented, that we have 400 MPs and we have 2,000 plus MCAs, and a lot of them are nominated, and we want to reduce that number, the best way is to reduce that number before the next election, so that that amendment takes effect with effect from the next election. And so I would say that that is probably something that we need to consider. And at the same time, entrench Chapter 6, so that the ruling that people can serve in public office unless they've exhausted all appeals when they have criminal and corruption cases, needs to be firmly and strongly resisted and removed from the Constitution, so that we don't have people who should be in jail sitting in Parliament and ensuring that they are not facing due process. I think I'd like to end my contribution there. And once again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mugambi, and thank you to all who have joined in. Very many comments as well on our comment section. Many people who had requested to speak. I believe in keeping conversations short and sweet. We've done this for about 2.5 hours now, going on to 3, and I propose that we end it here. But like I told the petitioners, as I was saying, let's have this conversation. This is the beginning of a journey. What I hear tonight is people exploring the the options of exercising the supreme powers that we have as citizens through this constitution. 14 petitioners have gone to court. They are supported by 16 advocates who are coming out here to say, how do we actually actualize our constitution? Many other scholars joining in and saying, how about we approach this route and the other one? Many citizens saying, this is a good way, or maybe it may not be the right way to go. It's a beginning of a conversation. I'd like to propose that we continue having these conversations. We'll host another one again with Kenyabora Tuitakayo in coming days, which we plan to incorporate all this feedback, take in more questions, and this time just open it to the public. What do you think about the call to recall a president through a referendum? Is it a good way? Is it a bad way? And we shall make it a debate. I want to thank you very much for that. So I want to come in now to some of the petitioners and then the advocate, one of the advocates, to come and close. I think I will give the microphone to Cyprian. Cyprian Nyamwamu is a spokesperson for Kenyabora Tuitakayo. You will close, but before you do that, Lempa, as Wakili, you can take us through the next steps and what you expect to see in coming days, in coming weeks, in coming months? Wakili Lempa.
Thank you very much for giving me the second bite. Thank you everyone who has contributed to this debate. It has been very enlightening. We expect, of course, the judge has given directions. We expect the respondents to put in their responses, and we probably expect a PO on so many of the questions that we have raised. And of course, that is one of the delaying tactics. You realize when a party does not have a clear defense in a matter, they opt for delaying tactics. Thank you very much. We expect a lot of work, a lot of research to go into this, because of course you expect them to bring in very seasoned lawyers, of course, to oppose the petition and face us in court. But as my senior Mr. Kibe says, and as in Kiswahili huwa tunasema tuko na kifua cha kupambana na wao. My senior has explained it very clearly that in times of critical juncture, sometimes you do not require money to be paid. And I can give you an example of about 2 weeks ago when the Kenya Kwanza Gulag arrested about 187 Gen Zs and presented them to court at around 8 p.m. A galaxy or a phalanx of advocates from LSK led by Faith Viembo turned up and were leaving the court at around midnight, which was a service to the Republic with no pay. So the question as who is funding the Gen Zs or who is funding the advocates should not arise at this time. It's like probably someone would have asked in 1950s during the British Gulag, who is funding the Mau Mau. It is a case of patriotism. And thank you very much, gentlemen, for turning up for this. We have learned a lot. And I believe my senior, Mr. Kibe, and other advocates in the matter will incorporate all your concerns for us to strengthen the petition. We are still at the early stages of the petition, and if needs be, probably Mr. Kibe will guide us on whether to amend the constitution and put in some of your concerns. But insofar as we are concerned, as Mr. Kibe has said, we have a very strong petition, and we believe that we have presented a very hot potato to the judiciary or to the court. And we do not expect them to take it very slowly along the edges of a bowl. Thank you very much, Mr. Latif. I now defer to Mr. Kibe and Mr. Cyprian Nyamwamu.
Asante sana Lempa. Indeed, it's a hot potato, not just for the courts, but for the entire country. Cyprian Nyamwamu, close this for us. Oh, no, before you do that, Wakili Kibe, come in, Wakili.
Yes, I think I need to do two things in closing. Number one is to say to my learned friend, Mr. Mugambi, that it is true the Constitution has provided a clear procedure for amendment and to deal with certain kinds of referendums that are provided for in articles of. But remember that the Constitution itself is not exhaustive, and it is stated clearly in Article 19 and 20. The rights under Article 1, that is the spirit of the Constitution from the Chief Justice Emeritus Mutunga, is that the enumeration of any right is not a complete list. Therefore, if there is an Article 1 in existence, that article can be implemented with or without a specific procedure under the Constitution provided for in a law by Parliament. Finally, I end up by saying that we are very grateful for the many opinions that have been given. We can now anticipate many of the doubts that probably be in the opposition, on the opposition side from the judges. We are going to make a richer petition, because I believe this is a petition that at some stage would require some amendment, because very many people who have read it keep saying, oh, you should have explained this a little bit more or the other. We have received a lot of commentaries from the general members of the public, some very educated than us, and we are grateful to all of them. People want to see results, because we do not want paralysis in resolutions of national problems. If the question of legitimacy arises, like it did arise in England, about whether to be in the European Union or not, the supreme authority of the people must be invoked. We are invoking it this instance. I am confident the High Court will not stand in the way if we demonstrate that indeed we have had an incompetent government that has lost legitimacy. Thank you very much. Very glad to organize this.
Thank you. Thank you, Wakili. Cyprian.
Thank you very much, Eric. First of all, to really thank you, Eric, and those who co-hosted the space with you. I want to close tonight's very rich engagement that has gone down by quoting what Chief Justice Emeritus David Maraga said on September 1st, 2017. He said, and I quote, that the greatness of any nation lies in its fidelity to the Constitution and adherence to the rule of law, and above all, respect to God. There are three things there that Chief Justice Maraga said that we must, first of all, operate in fidelity to our Constitution. Anytime we are outside the Constitution, like it has been more than 36 times now, since 2022, we are going to be in chaos and we are going to breach the very peace of our country. Secondly, the rule of law. If we are not going to uphold the rule of law, we are going to destroy our economy and we are going to destroy every institution and pillar of this country. And finally, let us not use the word of God in vain, as it has been the culture now. We are being called upon to actually uphold a new culture that this Constitution has set out and must be governed by the Constitution. The Gen Zs and the millennials are telling us that the only way forward for this country is to operate within a new culture which is based on the values that the Constitution has approved. May God bless you, and I want to thank everyone who found time to be on this very educative, very enriching debate. And particularly to you, Eric, thank you and good night.
Asante sana. Thank you very much, Cyprian, and thank you to the 13 other petitioners who have taken this bold step, to the advocates, to everybody who's supporting it. For me, like I said from the very beginning, and I want to repeat, I'm not part of the petitioners, but as a journalist and somebody who likes to engage on matters of moving and advancing our country forward, I find this a very interesting conversation. Let's keep having it. I'll be reaching out to the organizers of Kenya Bora to Utakaya through Cyprian to see how we can. Let's have another one, make it a more public debate for the lawyers also to get more feedback from the people. Like Wakili Kibe Mungai has said, they are open to getting more feedback, more suggestions, more ideas, and maybe they'll incorporate it and take it forward into their petition. Everybody who's joined in, thank you very much. Do have yourselves a lovely day, lovely night, wherever you are, and see you next time.